Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. Good. Be seated, please. Om Parameshvara. Good. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryan Karavavahayi Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahayi. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. Good. There you are. Welcome to you all to our continuing Bhagavad Gita class. Also, welcome to all the students watching online. I should mention I'm really enjoying reading all the comments left by viewers from all over the world. Thank you for your comments and your encouragement. And if you ask questions, I'm sorry I'm not able to answer your questions or reply to your comments, but I read everything. And if I read questions, and the best I can, I will incorporate them into this class. Okay, we continue today. Actually, we are going to conclude our study of chapter 15 today. We will begin with recitation, starting with verse 16. As always, as I'm chanting, read the translation and then repeat after me. Dvavimau purushau loke, dvavimau purushau loke, charashchaksharahevacha, charashchaksharahevacha, ksharasarvani bhutani, ksharasarvani bhutani, kutasthoksharahujyate, kutasthoksharahujyate, uttamah purushastvanyah, uttamah purushastvanyah, paramatmetyudahritah, paramatmetyudah. Yolokatrayamavishya, yolokatrayamavishya, bibhartyavyayahi bibhartyavyayahi yasmat ksharamati toham, yasmat ksharamati toham, aksharapi chottamaha, aksharapi chottamaha, atosmi loke vedecha, atosmi loke vedecha, pratitah purushottamah, pratitah purushottamah, yo mamevamasambudho, yo mamevamasambudho. Janati purushottamam, janati purushottamam, sasarva vidbhajati mam, sasarva vidbhajati mam, sarva bhavena bharata, sarva bhavena bharata, iti guhyatamam shastram, iti guhyatamam shastram, idamuk maya nagha, idamuktam maya nagha, etad buddhva buddhiman syat, etad buddhva buddhiman syat, kritakrityascha bharata, kritakrityascha bharata. And that's the final verse of the chapter. Okay. Before we pick up this last part, there was a question on the prior class. We had used a word, or Sri Krishna had used the word Vaishwanaraha to describe the fire of digestion, Ishvara's presence within you as the one who consumes the four kinds of food, you remember in that verse. The question comes, why does the word Vaishwanara mean the fire of digestion? How is it that Madhusudana Saraswati and other commentators arrive at this conclusion? So how do we interpret complicated words? And in fact, in today's class, I'll give you an example of a complicated word that's coming. Here, Vaishwanara, the first step in interpreting a word is to look at its etymology. This is what every good scholar will do, and you break the word down into its component parts. It comes from Vishwa and Nara. Nara, person, who is Vishwa, everywhere, all, and then it undergoes a grammatical process called tadhita. For our grammar students, it becomes an adjective. Vaishwanara, that which is common for all people, is the first definition in the dictionary, Vaishwanara. But then in the dictionary, there are about a dozen other definitions. So that which is common for all people is a general definition that's based on its etymology, the derivation of the word. But the particular meaning of a word is always based on context, without exception. So we need to understand the context. And the context, excuse me, the context is not just a particular verse, the context is the entire text. In fact, the context is the entire body of the teachings of Vedanta. So every word has to be properly understood in its given context. Among the dozen meanings found in the dictionary, one of those meanings happens to be the fire of digestion, and that is the meaning that Madhusudana, Shankaracharya, and all the commentators go for that meaning. Why do they choose that meaning? Because they understand the context. So based on that context, they come. We'll see another example of word interpretation like that in this very first verse. We've come to the final part of chapter 15, where Sri Krishna describes who is Purushottama, the Uttama Purusha, and as you remember, that's the title of the chapter, Purushottama Yoga. So let's see, how does Sri Krishna define who is that Uttama Purusha, the highest being? Repeat after me. Dvavimau Purushau Loke, Dvavimau Purushau Loke, Charas Chakshara Hevacha, Charas Chakshara Hevacha, Charas Sarvani Bhutani, Charas Sarvani Bhutani, Kutastokshara Huchyate, Kutastokshara Huchyate. Sri Krishna says, Loke, in the world, Dvau imau purushau. Imau. There are these two, and there's a dual number. Imau dvau, these two what? Purushau, beings. These two beings exist, loke, in the world. What are those two beings that exist in the world? By the way, being, don't take Purusha too literally here as person. So that which, here we're talking about two existences in the world. What are those two existences? That which is ksharaha, subject to decay, and aksharaha, evacha, and that which is not subject to decay. This is another good example of how you really need to know context to interpret what in the world is being said here. And that's obviously the reason when we study the Bhagavad Gita independently, we miss a lot of the meaning. I think it was probably in the 1970s, I read a translation of the Bhagavad Gita. I read and read and read and read. And okay, what should I read next? What do you think I understood? Extremely little. Which is why we go through the Bhagavad Gita in this kind of detail here. Without this kind of effort, we won't get the meaning at all. So, what do you mean by two beings, one that is decaying, one that is undecaying? This is a reference to some technical teaching Sri Krishna had given us some time ago. I'm not sure where, but I do remember we had a discussion about the difference between para prakriti and apara prakriti. Do you remember those terms? Prakriti, nature, and then we talk about a para prakriti, higher nature, and apara prakriti, lower nature. And here prakriti is used as a technical term. We're not talking about grass and trees and stuff. We're talking about prakriti as a technical term. Apara prakriti, the lower prakriti, is the world, the manifest world. Para prakriti, the higher prakriti, is the cause for the world. But notice the term used is prakriti, so we're not talking about Ishvara as the cause for the world. We're talking prakriti. So para prakriti, apara prakriti. Apara prakriti is world, no problem. Para prakriti is the immediate cause for the world, not the overall cause for the world, but the immediate cause for the world, which is Maya Shakti. If you remember our discussion before, Maya Shakti is Ishvara's creative power. It's the creative power through which pure existence becomes manifest as this world of names and forms. Maya Shakti. And the best way to understand that, by the way, throw away that definition illusion that you've read too many times. Maya is, in this context, Maya does not mean illusion. In this context, Maya means creative power, creative capacity. So our definition here of Maya Shakti is the creative power or capacity through which Ishvara becomes manifest as this world of names and forms. So pure existence becomes manifest as infinite number of names and forms due to Maya Shakti, which is now the higher Prakriti, as opposed to the lower Prakriti. Higher because it's cause. Maya Shakti is cause, and world is effect. Cause and effect. Of course, in the next verse, we're going to discuss where did the cause and effect come from. Both. That's where we go to the Uttama Purusha, but that's coming in the next verse. So right now, we've understood Kshara, the first of these two Purushas, is Maya Shakti, the power of creation. Second of the two, which is Kshara, decaying. I'm sorry, I said Kshara before. So Maya Shakti is Akshara in the sense that it doesn't come and go. The world comes and goes. The world is constantly decaying. Our bodies are constantly decaying. Everything, but you know the physical rule of entropy. Very nicely put in physics. Anything put together falls apart. And it is true in physics, and it is true in our lives. Anything put together falls apart. That's the law of entropy. That is here called kshara, that which decays, the entire world, as opposed to that which is akshara, that which is non-decaying, which is Maya Shakti. It's Ishvara's power. Ishvara doesn't come and go. Ishvara's power doesn't come and go. He continues to give this definition in a little more detail. Ksharaha, the one that is subject to decay, which means world, right? The world is what? Sarvani Bhutani. You can imagine Sri Krishna pointing all around. All of these beings, all of these things that exist, all of this is part of the apara prakriti, the lower prakriti, here called ksharaha, that which is subject to decay. And he says, aksharaha uchyate, the higher one is called kutastaha. And here's the word I want to talk about, a little bit like this Vaishwanara. It's a word that has many, many definitions. In fact, I looked in a dictionary and I counted approximately 40 definitions in Apte's dictionary, a standard dictionary. 40! So then how are you possibly going to get the right meaning out of 40? That's why we use commentaries. And the commentator, both Madhusudana and Shankara, very nicely tell me that my translation is absolutely wrong. It is absolutely wrong. Now, why do I have a wrong translation here? Well, when I do these translations, I do them without studying the commentaries. I study the commentary right before class, and that's when I get to find out where I've made blunders, and I've made several. So here is a blunder. Why did this blunder take place? Well, in Advaita Vedanta, kutastha is a very commonly used word to mean that which is unchangeable, that which is immutable. And the etymology of the word is staha, that which is stable like a kuta, a big mass. And the metaphor that's often used is that of an anvil. An anvil is a big mass of steel. And it's a very good metaphor because the blacksmith pounds on a piece of metal against the anvil. The metal changes, but the anvil doesn't. So the anvil is immutable, but the piece of metal he's pounding on is mutable. So this is a typical meaning of kutastha in Advaita Vedanta, but actually Madhusudana goes on about this for a sentence or two, and he points out that meaning doesn't work. He actually says, some people misinterpret this, like me, and he explains why it can't mean unchanging. Unchanging refers to ultimate reality. We're not talking about an ultimate reality here. We're talking about Maya Shakti. Maya Shakti is not the highest reality. We come to the highest reality in the next verse. So you cannot translate this kutastaha as immutable or unchangeable, a word for the highest reality, Brahman. And Madhusudana says that's absolutely wrong, and he gives a different etymology. I said 40 different meanings. So one of those meanings, in fact, several of those meanings are based on a different meaning for kuta. Kuta itself has a bunch of meanings. One is a mass. In fact, Shankaracharya also gives that, Rashi. He gives a big mass of something. But the word that Madhusudana seizes on is kuta also means that which is crooked, that which is deceitful, that which is misleading. So kutastaha, that which is established in the false, kutastaha. Now that's not the typical Vedantic meaning, but Madhusudana shows that you can't use the typical Vedantic meaning here. So kutastaha here means it is not absolute reality, it is mithya, is what he says here. Anyway, I hope I haven't bored you, but this shows the necessity for a little bit of scholarship if you want to interpret these scriptures correctly. So this is kind of typical. So, Paraprakriti, Maya Shakti, the creative capacity through which the world is created, is one. Number 2 is the created world. Cause and effect are these two Purushas. But now in the next verse, Sri Krishna is going to talk about what is above or beyond these two. Cause and effect. What is beyond cause and effect? He says, Uttamah Purushas Tvanyaha, Uttamah Purushas Tvanyaha, Paramatmet Yudahritaha, Paramatmet Yudahritaha, Yolokatrayama Vishya, Yolokatrayama Vishya, Bibhartyavyayahishwaraha, Bibhartyavyayahishwaraha. The end of the first line, you have to break apart the words. Purushaha tu anyaha. Tu, but. Anyaha. There is another Purusha. Number 3, which is Uttamaha, which is higher than the other two. What is that third Purusha? Paramatma iti udahritaha. Udahritaha, it is called Paramatma. Iti puts it in quotation marks. Paramatma is one of many words we use for the highest reality. The reality because of which everything exists. The reality because of which names and forms exist. There are two basic principles here. One is the existence of names and forms, but the other is all of the names and forms in the universe are organized in highly intelligent ways. We've commented before that planets continue to orbit their suns and electrons continue to orbit their nuclei. It's not random, so it's not merely names and forms. When we say that the world is nama rupa, you've got only half of it. Because nama rupa could be random little particles flying around. Nama rupa means name and form. It is not an adequate description of the world in which we live. The world in which we live is highly ordered, highly intelligent. So, we have to say then, what is the source of these names and forms, and what is the source of the intelligence, because of which all these names and forms appear in the form of an orderly, intelligent universe? That's what he's saying here, that Paramatma, the supreme self, the highest self, the self of all. You can translate it in several words, in several ways. This is the highest reality. The reality because of which the world exists, that's easy. The reality even because of which Maya Shakti exists. And this, by the way, is what leads us to the word Advaita, non-dual. At the level of creation, there's always duality. At the level of world, creation and creator. Already you've got duality, right? You've got one Ishvara who possesses Maya Shakti, who creates a world which is infinitely complex, all duality. But the ancient rishis realized a truth which they called Advaita, absolutely non-dual, which means there is one reality and only one reality, which means you can't have Brahman plus Maya Shakti. That's two, right? There's only Brahman. Now that can be really unsettling and confusing. How can we even... And there's a nice American English expression. How can we wrap our heads around this teaching? that Brahman and Maya Shakti, remember, Maya Shakti is the power of creation. Brahman is absolute reality. That's two. How can the ancient rishis say one? Not, in fact, they don't even say one. They say there's not a second to be found. And the best way to understand this in a very simple and experiential way is to go back to a metaphor we go back to again and again, your dream world. You are the creator of your dream world. You are the sustainer of your dream world. When you wake up, your dream world returns to you. You remember this metaphor? We've used it several times. Now, here let's apply this teaching to the dream world. So there is, in this world, we have cause and effect. Remember, immediate cause. Immediate cause is Maya Shakti, and the effect is this physical world. How about your dream? So there's a dream world. What is the immediate cause for your dream world? Well, we'll call it not Maya Shakti, we'll call it Swapna Shakti. Swapna Shakti means the power of dreaming. Your dreams come from memories. Dreams come from imagination. Clearly, you have a power of dreaming. That power of dreaming, we call Swapna Shakti. I'm making that word up. You won't find it in a dictionary. I don't know, maybe it's right. I don't think so. Anyway, Swapna Shakti, your power of dreaming, is one. Your dream world is two. And you, the dreamer, is three. Now, watch this. Suppose there were no dream world. Dreamer exists. Suppose there were no dream power. Dreamer exists. It exists because it's a higher level of reality. Your dream power belongs to your mind. And you are more than your mind. You are beyond the mind. We use the word transcendent. In fact, that word in the first line, uttamaha, highest. Literally highest, but it can be translated as transcendent, that which is beyond. So, for your dream world, there is one dreamer, and at that highest level, there's only that one. In fact, right now, you are the dreamer who's sitting here in this hall, but as the dreamer sitting here in this hall, you're absolutely independent of the dream world and even the dream power. Right now, dream power is not an issue at all because you're awake. Unless if I go on and on and on and on, that might change. So far, you seem to be awake. Okay, so here, I'm just trying to make this a little bit more accessible because it's a very strange teaching. It is. So here, we recognize that you, the dreamer, are independent of your dream world, and you are independent of the power of dreaming. Dream world is equivalent to this physical world. Power of dreaming is equivalent to Maya Shakti. You, the dreamer, Uttama Purushaha, is what Sri Krishna is describing as the highest being, Paramatma iti. He calls it Paramatma, and he further describes it as Yaha in the third line. Yaha, the one who Lokatrayam Avishya, having pervaded Lokatrayam, the three worlds. What are the three worlds? The heavens, the earth, and anything in between. So having pervaded the three worlds, that Ishvaraha, that Lord, called Paramatma, called Uttama Purushaha, that Ishvara which is avyayaha, unchanging, not born, not subject to change, not subject to death. That Ishvara bibharti supports the three worlds. Just like you, the dreamer, perfect metaphor. He says here, lokatrayam avishya, pervading the three worlds. What about your dream world? Is the dream world away from you, remote? The dream world is inside you. That which is inside you is non-separate from you, pervaded by you. The trees in your dream world are not made of wood. The trees in your dream world are made of you. The mountains in your dream world are not made of rocks and dirt. The mountains in your dream world are made of you. You are present in and through that dream world as the very stuff out of which it's made. That dream world is non-separate from you. The dream world is within you. Lokatrayam avishya. That's the sense in which Ishvara pervades the world. Ishvara pervades the world like clay pervades this pot. That's accurate. Ishvara pervades the world like clay pervades this pot. So you get the idea of pervasion now in a little different way. Okay, when I say different way, that reminds me, when I was a child, there was a cartoon that I was particularly fond of, and when I was quite young, and it was called Casper the Friendly Ghost. This would be probably in the late 1950s. So Casper was a friendly ghost, so they're child-friendly. And I remember watching Casper being able to go right through walls. And some people think Ishvara is like Casper the Friendly Ghost because he pervades the world. Not like that. Not like Casper the Friendly Ghost. Okay. What a silly example. All right, next verse. Yasmat ksharamati toham, yasmat ksharamati toham, aksharapi chottamaha, aksharapi chottamaha, atosmi loke vedecha, atosmi loke vedecha, pratitaf purushottamaha, pratitaf purushottamaha. The first half is yasmat, because. The second half is ataha, therefore. That's the structure of our verse. Yasmat, because. Sri Krishna says, because aham ksharamati taha, something has just changed. Prior 2 verses, he was teaching in the third person. He was talking about there is a uttama purusha beyond the two of paraprakriti and aparaprakriti. There is an uttama purusha, he said in the prior verse, the one who is called the Supreme Self, Paramatma, the one who is Ishvara, who pervades the world and sustains it. But now he kind of drops a bomb here where he says, aham, I am that uttama purusha. If you follow the text, it's a bomb. So far, he's teaching in a philosophical way. O Arjuna, there is a being beyond cause and effect. Beyond the world and its cause, there is a higher being called Paramatma. Oh, by the way, Arjuna, I am that Paramatma. So it's very dramatic, and I'm trying to convey to you that drama, and it's quite intentional. Sri Krishna says, aham, I am ksharam atitaha, I am beyond atitaha, I am beyond ksharam, that which is decaying, the world. And he says in the second line, I am, you see that cha uttamaha, you have to break the words apart, and cha, I am uttamaha, I am higher than aksharat api. I am higher than even akshara. Remember, that was the cause for the world, Maya Shakti. So he says, I am higher than kshara, higher than the world. I am higher than akshara, higher than the cause for the world. I am higher than cause and effect. I transcend cause and effect. Ataha, in the second half. Therefore, I am pratitaha, in the last line, I am celebrated as being Purushottama. So Sri Krishna claims that title for himself. Of course, he's speaking here not as Arjuna's charioteer. He's not even speaking as an incarnation of Lord Vishnu. He's speaking as the highest reality. So he says, Aham, I am pratitaha, I am celebrated, I am declared to be Purushottamaha, the highest being. Where does that declaration take place? He says, Purushottamaha asmi, just to pick up that word, asmi is a verb, I am. So I am celebrated as Purushottama, the highest being, where? In the loka, loke, in the world, Vedecha, and in the scriptures. People in the world declare me to be the highest being, and also the scriptures declare me to be the highest being. People in the world, those who are enlightened, not everyone in the world. I don't think Duryodhana would call Krishna the Uttama Purusha. You remember in the story, Duryodhana really hated Krishna. So here, in the world and in the scriptures, Sri Krishna claims that title, Purushottama. I am celebrated as the highest being. And that's the style of the whole Bhagavad Gita. It's a stylistic device where Sri Krishna speaks as the ultimate reality. Okay, next. Yo mam hevam sammudho, yo mam hevam sammudho, janati purushottamam, janati purushottamam, sasarvavid bhajati mam, sasarvavid bhajati mam, sarva bhavena bharata, sarva bhavena bharata. Yaha asammudaha janati. Yaha, one. One who is asammudha. Sammudha, mudha confused. Sammudha, totally confused. Asammudha, totally free from confusion, enlightened. Yaha asammudaha, one who is enlightened, janati, knows. Knows whom? Mam eva, me, indeed. One who is enlightened knows me how? As Purusha Uttamam. One who is enlightened knows me as the highest being. And once again, Sri Krishna refers to himself not as Arjuna's charioteer or an incarnation of Lord Vishnu. He refers to himself as that highest reality, as Purushottama. So that one who is asammudha, totally free from confusion, meaning the one who recognizes the ultimate truth. The ultimate truth because of which you exist, I exist, the world exists. So Sri Krishna says about that person, Saha, that person is sarvavit. That person knows everything. Now, that word sarvavit often gets confused. What does it mean when we say the enlightened person is sarvavit? The enlightened person knows everything. people don't think sometimes. So if you think, oh, when you get enlightened, you know people, I don't know how people can just be so gullible and they just swallow this. Oh, when you're enlightened, you know everything. So that means when you get enlightened, you know the Chinese language. Just like that, without studying a bit. How absurd, right? You know how to do heart surgery, you know how to write computer code. Come on. So sarvavit, it's used in a technical sense here. And this expression goes way back to the Upanishads, where I think it's Yajnavalkya who teaches, and I could be wrong. He teaches, if you have a pile of pots and you know clay, by knowing clay, you know all the pots. You could have hundreds and thousands of pots, each pot a different size, a different shape, a different color. To know each of those pots individual could take you days to go through the pile and look at each pot, record its size and its color. Suppose you were going to do that. It would be a huge project. But if you shift your perspective by knowing clay, all the pots are known. The enlightened person knows the underlying reality because of which everything exists. That's why the enlightened person is called sarvavit. He or she knows the underlying reality because of which everything exists. That underlying reality is Purushottama. So that saha sarvavit, that enlightened one who knows everything, what does that person do? Bhajati mam, worships me, sarva bhavena, with his whole heart. Bharata, O Arjuna, how do we get this sudden shift from knowing? Prior verse, he says, janati, he knows me, therefore bhajati, therefore he worships me. Oh, Sri Krishna has a different definition of worship. See, the conventional definition of worship is you stand at the altar, you are the worshiper, and Ishvara, God of the cosmos, is the worshipped. The deities on the altar are manifestations of that Ishvara or representations of that Ishvara. So clearly, there's a difference between worshipper and worshipped duality. But we're talking about an enlightened person. How does an enlightened person worship Ishvara? This is a question that's asked quite often. When you know everything is Ishvara, how do you worship Ishvara? Well, Sri Krishna tells you right here. The knowledge that everything is Ishvara is in itself a form of worship. And here we have to redefine worship. Bhajati means he worships. What does it mean to worship? What does it mean to pray? And let me give I think a helpful and very fundamental definition of prayer, a definition you may not have heard before. The definition is this: prayer is any act of being related to Ishvara. Any act of relationship to Ishvara, being related to Ishvara in any manner whatsoever, is prayer. Prayer is an act of being connected to, related to Ishvara. How about the enlightened person? So now the person standing in front of an altar has a relationship with Ishvara. What is the relationship? Ishvara is the creator. I am the created. Ishvara is the worshipped. I am the worshipper. Relationship. What is it for the enlightened person? Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. Everything is Ishvara. Everything including this one. Everything is Ishvara. The enlightened person knows this consistently. The feeling of devotion, we've talked about this before, emotions come and go. The feeling of devotion comes and go. The feeling of being a worshiper will go away when you leave the altar behind. Feelings come and go. We generally think of worship as being simply an emotion, but Sri Krishna doesn't define worship here in terms of emotions. He defines worship here in terms of knowing who Ishvara is. Knowing that all this is Ishvara. What is my relationship to Ishvara? I am non-separate from that Ishvara. The enlightened person has this abiding understanding. That's sarva bhavena, has that sense of this abiding understanding, unwavering understanding that I am non-separate from the Ishvara who is the creator, sustainer, destroyer of the world. I am non-separate. The enlightened person has that perspective at all times, and Sri Krishna calls that worship. I'm just looking for a metaphor. Suppose there's someone great. And for example, to me, Mahatma Gandhi was great. Not everyone feels that way, and I understand that, but I think Gandhiji was an absolutely incredible person. So now, and he's dead. So how should I show respect for Gandhi? He's long dead. How should I show respect? Now, I read this biography. It was 700 pages. By knowing more about his life, this is my showing of respect. I'm trying to convey to you how knowledge can be a form of worship. Not that I'm worshiping Gandhi, but by reading every page of that big biography, that instilled in my heart even more respect for him. So I'm suggesting that this division, we make a division between knowledge, understanding, knowing, we make a division between knowledge and worship. A division between jnanam and bhakti. Common division, right? Sri Krishna doesn't make that division here. First half he says janati, he knows. Second half he says bhajati, he worships. For Sri Krishna, the enlightened person's knowledge is a form of worship. Enough said. Let's see the last verse of the chapter. Iti guhyatamam shastram, iti guhyatamam shastram, idamuktam mayanagha, idamuktam mayanagha, etad buddhva buddhiman syat, etad buddhva buddhiman syat, Kritakrityascha bharata, kritakrityascha bharata. Iti, thus. Second line, idam uktam. This has been said, maya, by me, anagha, O Arjuna, literally sinless one. O sinless one, O Arjuna. This has been said, uktam, maya, by me. I have told you this. What have I told you, Arjuna? I have told you this Shastram, this teaching, this knowledge. The Shastra, which is Guhya Tamam, secret. Most secret. Guhya Tara is more secret. Guhya Tama, that which is the most secret of all. How is this scripture so secret? How is this teaching so secret? You may have heard my joke about this before. Anything that's hidden in plain view and unrecognized is the most secret. It's here now. Ishvara is here now. It's a matter of recognition. Yeah, I've given this metaphor long ago. Some of you know these abstract art in which there is a three-dimensional image hidden. The author calls it magic eye. And what it is, you see just a tangle of colors and shapes and forms, but you can't make anything out. What it is, it's a very carefully designed, two images are present, overlapped on each other, which if you look at it correctly, you can see a three-dimensional image. I'm describing it because a few of you may not have seen one. Many of you have seen this. And the way it works is you look at it and you don't see anything, but then you train your eyes to kind of look at the horizon, look at the distance. And by normally our eyes converge. By diverging your eyes, a three-dimensional image comes into view. And it's really quite startling. It's very dramatic when you get it, and suddenly this three-dimensional image emerges off of this sheet of paper. Very dramatic, very powerful, and that's not a bad metaphor to describe how dramatic and powerful it is to see the reality hidden in plain view right now. Look at that. The three-dimensional image is hidden, but it's right in front of you. You have to look at that image correctly to get the three-dimensional form. In the same way, Ishvara is here now, hidden in plain view. When you learn how to look correctly, which means you need, in fact, Sri Krishna uses the term, you need jnana chakshus. You need to look through the eyes of wisdom. When you look at the world through the eyes of wisdom, you see Ishvara's presence wherever you look. The second line, Sri Krishna concludes the chapter, Etad buddhva, having understood this truth of Ishvara, this truth of Purushottama, the highest being, having understood this truth, buddhiman syat. One becomes literally intelligent, but again, context, enlightened. One becomes enlightened, not just enlightened, krita krityaha, fulfilled. And the sense here is if you know the truth of the world, are you part of the world or not? You're not separate, you're part of the world, part of nature. So when you know the reality because of which the world exists, you know the reality because of which you exist as an individual being. You know the truth of yourself. You know your true nature as being Satchidananda. You know that so-called inner divinity. Based on this shift of perspective, you become krita krityaha, fulfilled. No sense of desire, no feeling of lack or want or insufficiency. You are absolutely fulfilled. Bharata, O descendant of King Bharat, is Bharata, O Arjuna, one becomes fulfilled. And that brings us to the end of chapter 15. What we've been doing after every chapter is using our English translation. You know that I composed a abbreviated English translation which follows the meter of the original Sanskrit so that we can chant these English verses using the same meter. And it's a nice way to review the chapter at the end of this chapter. We'll do that now. The first verse you can listen and repeat, and the following verses you can repeat after me. Listen. The blessed Lord said, the blessed Lord said, the tree of life has roots above. The tree of life has roots above. Vedic hymns are its many leaves. Vedic hymns are its many leaves. Branches and roots hang down below. Branches and roots hang down below. Into the world of human hacks. Into the world of human hacks. We'll chant together now. Join me. Its form here cannot be perceived, nor its start, its middle or end. Its trunk, though sturdy, can be cut by detachment. The mighty hacks, free from delusion and from pride, with detachment they seek the self, transcending all dualities. They attain the eternal state. There the sun's light can never reach, nor the light of the moon or fire. Reaching there they do not return. That is my own supreme abode. A part of myself in the world has become the eternal soul. Then that part drew unto itself body, mind, and sense faculties, presiding over sight and touch, hearing, taste, and the sense of smell, ruling over the mind as well. It perceives and enjoys all things. It abides in the hearts of all. With eyes of wisdom this is seen, but those deluded and impure cannot see this, though they may strive. The brilliance of the sun above, illumining the world so vast, and the splendor of moon and fire. Understand that light to be mine. My energy pervades the earth, sustaining all the creatures there. I myself nourish every being, the sap of life itself, as the digestive fire within. In every creature I abide, united with their life and breath. I consume all the foods they eat, being the source of memory and of knowledge and reasoning. I abide in the hearts of all. Through the Vedas am I thus known. In this world two beings exist, perishing and unperishing. Creatures are all perishable, but their souls perish not at all. Beyond these two is the highest truth. Thus it is called the Self Supreme, having pervaded all the worlds. The Lord sustains and blesses all, since I transcend what perishes, also the imperishable. Therefore I am the Self Supreme, praised in the Vedas and the world. Is that one more? Sorry. Oh, I pushed the wrong button. Sorry. One more. The undeluded know me well. as the highest, the self-supreme. Thus enlightened they worship me with their whole hearts and with their minds. O Arjuna, I have declared this most secret teaching of all. Knowing this truth, one can become enlightened and fulfilled in life. And there we have a summary of chapter 15, one of the more tricky chapters, I would say, of the Bhagavad Gita, but we've had a chance to go very deeply into it and really gain something from that study. We'll conclude our class in a moment. A couple of quick announcements. Tomorrow, Sunday, we have our Vedanta class at 10 o'clock. We'll see Shankara's brilliant teachings from Upadesha Sahasri. Come and join us immediately after immediately after class. At 11 o'clock is satsang, question answer. Please come and join us. We'll conclude with our brief prayers at the altar. Om Gananahan Tva Ganapatigam Avamahe Gavim Gavinam Upamashravastamam Jeshtarajam Brahmanam Brahmanaspataha Nashrinvan Utbasira Saranam Om Mahaganapataye Namaha Ishvaro Gururhatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyoma Vadvyapta Dehaya Dakshina Murtaye Namaha Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramhanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschad Dukkha Bhag Bhavet Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityorma amritangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat.